Hello, everybody. I'm Derek Arden, and welcome to Monday Night Live. Tonight, I've got a nutritionist on, Anna Gray. Anna's had an interesting journey through her business career, starting as a nurse and then into PR in healthcare, and finally as a nutritionist. Anna, welcome to Monday Night Live. Thanks very much for joining us. Give us a snapshot of your life, Anna.
Well, thank you very much for having me this evening. So, as you rightly say, I started off my career as a nurse. I left school with very few qualifications, but decided I wanted to be a nurse and work in healthcare because healthcare has always been of interest to me. Well, actually, the workings of the human body has been more of my interest rather than healthcare per se, but just been fascinated by how our body works. So I went into nursing and decided 3 years into a 4-year degree that partly it wasn't really for me. I didn't really want to work in the NHS at all. And I was also not very well at the time. So I switched and did a health studies degree instead and managed to graduate after 4.5 years at university and went to work in public health. So I worked in public health for about a year, which was great, really interesting. But it was still NHS and it was still trying to do things that on a shoestring with not a lot of support. And then I answered an advert in the local paper, basically, which said, do you like healthcare and do you like talking to people, was the summary of it. And I thought, well, yeah, I do. And went to an interview, got the interview and started a career in what is medical communications and PR. So for 25 years, I've been working with healthcare organisations, mostly corporate healthcare organisations, to promote brands for them, to work with them to create programmes for patients and to help educate clinicians and nurses, and really just a lot of different communication and advocacy for pharmaceutical companies and for healthcare providers, for medical device companies and all sorts. So that's what I went into, and that became my career. And then I went through quite a few ups and downs with my health and became basically the poster child for the pharmaceutical industry, and was quite ill at one point. I got bitten by a tick and ended up with Lyme disease. Wow. So I went from actually I was at the time I got bitten, I was supporting some of my friends doing Ironman, which I did. I completed 3 Ironman. I completed many marathons, did long distance cycling, swimming, all sorts. But I went from doing that to not being able to get out of bed. I was completely floored by it. Oh. And then tried to find a way to help myself, because whilst being the poster child for the pharmaceutical industry, I wasn't very happy with the thought of having to take, I think I was taking, at one stage, I was taking 8 different medications, but about 20 tablets a day. And I didn't really fancy doing that for the rest of my life, and because it didn't seem to be quite improving my symptoms to a stage where I could go out running again. I couldn't do my usual sport, and I had to drop down to 4 days a week at work so that I'd have a day to recover in order to actually have a weekend. So it was quite a difficult time, and that got me to really looking at ways in which I could improve my own health, and try and stop my dependency on so many medications. So with the help of my rheumatologist, I started to search for different ways of doing things. And that got me then into thinking about stress and how stress affects our body, because I was under so much stress that wasn't actually helping me get better. And how that affects performance, because I could see my work performance was dropping. I was really struggling with all sorts of things in work. I was at that stage, and I had been for about 10 years, a director of a global PR agency. So I was doing a lot of traveling. I was traveling across Europe a lot, and then traveling to the States a fair bit. And it was all just taking a toll. So yeah, I started doing some research myself into nutrition. And then found a nutritional therapist and started working with them and started to feel better. So that's how I ended up really studying nutrition and qualifying as a nutritional therapist myself.
Okay, well, we'll come on to nutrition next, but you moved from being in PR healthcare PR to director of a global PR agency. That sounds quite a move, and you weren't very well at the time.
I was a director. I'd basically been moving up the ranks. So I started off as a junior, and basically, every few years would move up a rung. I was very successful, and I enjoyed what I was doing. I loved it. It was a great place, great places to work. I worked always in agencies supporting big clients, so I was always working in a team, and it was quite long hours. I'm sure anybody who's worked in an agency supporting corporate clients knows that you basically, it's client says jump, you say how far, and you have to respond to what they want, and it was quite long hours. At the same time, we went out and entertained ourselves as well, so long hours into the evening. If we were working into the evening or going out in the evening, so it was quite a toll on the body generally, and then to get ill on top of that obviously was it was quite difficult. But yes, I was a director. So I was director about 15 years, at director level, so leading.
Well, congratulations on that. Did you get ill when you were doing that, or before that? Or
yes. After? So I was leading a UK team of a global agency when I started to get ill.
And with that non-stop jet lag, where you're supposed to get off the plane and perform as if you're okay when you feel.
Yes, and with pharmaceutical companies who won't pay for business class. So you get economy. If it's anything under 6 hours is economy only. So New York, Boston, everything like that is all economy class.
Well, only on the way back. I think it's a bit longer than 6 hours on the way out when I went to New York, but then you got 3 hours at the airport and all that.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a contributory factor?
Yes, definitely. And that's where I think my interest in nutrition has been, and actually looking back, my interest has always been about things like stress and how stress impacts the body, because I was definitely sicker than I thought I should be, given I was exercising. I thought I was kind of eating okay, but the impact of external stresses on the body really has a big impact on how we cope with illness.
And the Lyme disease was the trigger, was it? Because
Lyme disease was the trigger, definitely.
I wasn't really aware of Lyme disease until my daughter got a dog and got some ticks, and suddenly I realised we could be walking in the countryside and a tick could jump on us.
Yes.
And that's pretty scary, because there's been a lot of publicity about Lyme disease at
So when I was diagnosed, I was an emergency case to hospital, because I had been ill and I'd been going back and forth to GP, and they couldn't work out what was wrong with me. I had lumps and bumps all over me, and my skin was swelling, and I ended up with quite an acute skin infection at the same time as well, because of the tick bite. And the hospital, I was living in St Albans at the time, and at Welwyn Garden City Hospital, they got all the junior doctors around me to have a look at me, and all stood around getting very excited, because it was the first case of Lyme disease that they'd seen.
Oh, gee. Okay. Wow. Okay, we better turn to nutrition. That's what everyone's come to learn about, and food, eating, sports, science, etc. It's a huge area at the moment. So tell us what we need to know, Anna.
Well, where do you start? I mean, if I think about my interest in terms of kind of stress, performance and food, and that's performance at work as well as outside of work. I work with quite a lot of people who are maybe struggling because they're not finding it difficult to concentrate at work. They're not doing as well. They're feeling more fatigued than usual, and trying to work out why they're not performing as well. But that also kind of crosses over into performance in sport as well a little bit. And everyone kind of wonders, well, what on earth has what we eat got to do with it? So I think the question I pose to most people is, where did the phrase gut feeling come from? Where did go with your gut come from? Where did you get butterflies in your stomach when your head's feeling wrong, but you get this feeling in your stomach? And that's because there is a huge connection between our gut and our brain, and that's via the vagus nerve, which is a massive superhighway of information. And the brain, it's not just the brain sending messages to the gut. Actually, 80% of it is the gut sending messages to your brain. So what's going into our gut is therefore going to have an impact on how our brain reacts and how our body reacts. Totally. So, and if you put that to one side, just the fact that our cells are made up of proteins, our cells are made up of fats, our brain is mostly fat. So if we're eating the wrong fat, then we're feeding our brain wrong. We need to be eating healthy fats to feed our brain and to keep it healthy. That then transfers across into things like Alzheimer's and degenerative brain diseases, because if we're not feeding our brain with omega-3s, if we're not feeding our brain with vitamin B12, which is really important for nerves and for brain health, then we're going to suffer more in terms of cognitive decline. And if we're not feeding our brain the right things, then that puts the brain under stress. That then puts the body under the gut under stress. So it's all connected. Our whole digestive system has an enormous impact on the rest of our body. I mean, our main defense mechanism, you might think, obviously, our skin prevents an awful lot of infection coming into us, and it prevents bacteria. But what we're putting into our mouths, that actually goes into our gut. And our gut, if you think about it, is actually, while it's inside us, is also external to us as well. The food has to pass through the gut to be inside us. So everything that's sitting in our gut is external. And that means you can take in bacteria through your mouth. You can take in, and actually that can inflame the gut. If our gut is not in the best health because of what we've been eating or what we've been putting it under in terms of stress, then you can have compromised ability to digest the vitamins and minerals that you need. So it is all very, very connected and very important that we kind of look more at food, not just as something to enjoy, which it obviously is. I hope for most people it's something to enjoy and something to sit around and be sociable with people and actually eat and really have a good time with food. But to look at that food as actually being in some way functional to how our gut and our body works. So I'm very much trying to get people to add good things into their diet to actually help, the health of the gut, which will then help prevent disease, but also help us be more resilient. And then also help in terms of, brain health and muscle health and whatever. Our muscles are made up of protein. And if you're not eating enough protein, then you're not going to be feeding your muscles well enough. And as we get older, we lose muscle because from our late 20s, we start to lose muscle tone. We start to actually lose muscle, and it does decrease over time. So unless you're actually doing the exercise to actually build your muscle and maintain your muscle, and actually feed it with the right proteins, then you're not going to be doing your body the greatest service. So yes, it's all
just a quick question. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Don't we get, if we eat lots of vegetables and fruit, don't we get enough vitamins from them to avoid having to take capsules, medication, or whatever?
Yeah, so you should, if you've got a fully functioning gut, then your diet should provide you with all of the nutrients you need to a point. Unfortunately, modern day farming has kind of depleted our soils somewhat. So there's quite a lot of talk about potentially the amount of magnesium in particular, which is not as prevalent in our soils now. So therefore it doesn't get eaten by it doesn't get taken up by the vegetables, and it doesn't get eaten by the cows and the sheep and whatever who are eating that food. So therefore, magnesium is one thing that is potentially limited in our diets, and that can actually have quite a big impact on our nerves and anxiety and stress, because our magnesium is very important for nerve function. And then if you're not having a fully balanced diet, then you might be missing out on certain minerals and what have you. So you do need to have, I would say, it's moderate intake of everything to have, and that is, if you look at your vegetables and your fruits, eat the rainbow, eat every single color of vegetable that you can, and try and get a big variety of vegetables across the week. So I think I run with my clients, it's a 30 challenge, to try and get 30 different fruits and vegetables, herbs and spices across a week, and do that every week, so that you're having a big variety. So having the same thing every day is not going to be feeding the gut, the microbes that live in our gut effectively, because that's the other thing. Our gut is actually really managed by trillions of microbiota. So that's bacteria, fungi, all sorts of living organisms that actually outweigh. So that there's more bacteria and organisms living in our gut than there are cells in our body.
Wow.
So they're the ones that really manage our guts, and we need to keep them healthy. We need to keep them happy, and they like a variety to keep them healthy.
I'm glad you didn't ask me what the 30 types of vegetables are, because I'd have been really struggling. I think we ought to ask the group if anyone's got any idea. You did mention some other things after that. And secondly, what about yogurt? I'm told they advertise on yogurt, don't they?
Yep.
Eat more yogurt because it's life.
More yogurt. So yogurt, as long as it is it's plain and it's Greek yogurt. So Greek yogurt is made in a particular way that ferments the yogurt. It needs to be unsweetened as well, so that the bacteria that are then grown and through the fermentation process actually are able to survive. So things like yogurt, things like kefir, which is a fermented milk, or you can have water kefir as well. So you can grow your own kefir. You just put the seeds in put the live mother in the bottom of a bottle and leave that to ferment. Kombucha and things like that, they also have live bacteria in them, and that helps to feed our gut and keep our gut microbes happy and entertained. So that's another. And also things like fermented foods, although fermented foods, it's down to each individual how they'll deal with that. If you haven't been eating a lot of fiber through your life, if you suddenly start to introduce a load of fermented foods, then your gut is going to go, whoa, what's going on here, and start being a bit kind of tetchy about it. So it's about introducing things slowly over time. I've
just looked at the gallery view to look at the body language of everybody on the chat show, just to see how many people understood what you were talking about there. Kefir, and I didn't. I think it's about 50-50. One or two people grinning my lack of knowledge, and one or two people looking a bit puzzled there.
Kefir and kombucha are probably the easiest things to get hold of outside of yogurt. So kefir is Kefir, and then kombucha, you can actually get some very, very good non-alcoholic kombucha drinks, which are a little bit like champagne.
Oh,
they're really nice.
Can you get alcoholic ones as well? I prefer alcoholic ones. Oh, okay, that's a shame. And fermented foods, of course, beer came straight to mind in that case.
Yeah, unfortunately, alcohol kind of cancels out the positivity of that.
Oh
yeah.
Okay.
I hate to be a fun police, but alcohol isn't the best for your system, unless it's a small glass of red wine does you some good. But even that's now debatable, unfortunately.
Well, it's always debatable. Question in the chat box, Anna, if that's okay at this point. What are the constitutions of can't say it, you know what I mean, of a fully balanced diet? What's made up of it?
So I would say you need to have, if you think about it as a plate, you want to have half of your plate covered with vegetables and grains, and so that would be vegetable plant matter, I'd say. So green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, which is your broccoli and cauliflower, other vegetables, so your root vegetables, your carrots, and also your vegetables that grow above ground, so peppers, aubergines, courgettes, and then you want to also have some fruit within that as well. You probably should be having about between 5 and 7 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, and I would actually say vegetables and fruit, so focusing more on the vegetables than the fruit. And then you want the other half of your plate to be your grains and legumes. So your legumes are things like your pea family, so that your beans, your black-eyed peas, beans, black beans, lentils, things like that. And then the other part of your plate is then a really good quality protein. And that could be more grains, because it could be chickpeas, and lentils are protein. But also I would say, if don't necessarily shun animal products. Eggs are a brilliant source of a variety of minerals and choline and protein and health and good fats and things. So good quality protein alongside. And then you would want to be having, if you want to have oils and things on the side, focusing on things like olive oil, extra virgin olive oil as your fats, or healthy fats, including omega-3s. So your protein could be an oily fish such as salmon or mackerel. So that was giving you, a tick for the protein, tick for the oily fat. And then really sweet things are few and far between. So trying to limit the amount of sugar that you take, and that includes things that are refined carbohydrates. So you have your carbohydrates, which are, well, actually, most vegetables have got carbohydrate. So everything kind of crosses over. There's no particular food stuff that sits particularly in one food group. But your carbohydrates that you want to be focusing on are whole grains. So the whole grain breads that aren't full of preservatives, and grains such as quinoa and rice, but brown rice that hasn't been bleached and hasn't been stripped of the really good fiber on the outside. And so brown rice or wild rice. And with rice and with quinoa, a lot of people would say, oh, but it doesn't really agree. Sometimes some people say it doesn't really agree with me. It makes my stomach a bit bloated. But you have to soak things like quinoa, and you have to soak rice in order to actually make them be able to be more palatable. Not for long, just soak the rice when you at lunchtime to eat in the evening, or even leave it all day. So if you're wanting to eat it in the evening, yeah.
I've just had a look at the gallery view. You're losing a lot of people, because I can see they're thinking that you don't get that in Sainsbury's and Tesco's. And
no. So actually, I think one of the things that the best thing you can do for your body, and the best thing you can do for your digestive system, is to buy from the fresh food aisles. Buy fresh vegetables. It really doesn't take long once you get used to preparing things, and you can prepare. I batch cook every weekend, so I batch cook and I freeze. I don't have a garage. I don't have any particular room for a freezer. I have a freezer in my shed, because I batch cook and put things in the shed and put it in the freezer. So I've always got a meal that I can get to. And I think it's the best way to try and actually plan things, and try and avoid buying things that are packaged with cellophane on the top. If you pick up something in the supermarket and flip it over and actually look at the ingredients, if it's got ingredients that you can't pronounce, if it's got ingredients that you don't actually know what they are, it's probably not going to be very good for you. And the problem is, with all the ultra processed food that we have at the moment in our shops, our gut isn't designed to actually eat it. If you think about our evolution over time, it really is the last 50 years when we have started to bring this into our lives, and we haven't evolved that quickly to be able to actually digest it.
But we live a lot longer now, don't we?
It's actually starting to go down. Actually, our life expectancy in the States and the UK is actually starting to reverse. So we're actually going the opposite direction at the moment. We were for a while getting a lot better, and we're now going in the opposite direction.
Interesting. Okay. I thought you were going towards sugar. I mean, sugar's in everything. You're not, I didn't realize till I heard you speak that sugar's in bread, sugar's all sorts of things.
All sorts of things. It gets added to make things palatable. Everything that's on the shelf that's in a packet that's got cellophane on the top in a plastic tub has probably got sugar in it, and it's got an awful lot of things in there to make things more palatable, and they're not necessarily things that are going to fill you up. Protein will fill you up. Starting your day with a good protein-based breakfast will fill you up and keep you full and stop you reaching for the sugar. The problem with sugar is you get a big sugar high, and then you get a big sugar drop, and then you want to reach again for the sugar. So you have a day that goes like this constantly. So your energy levels go up and down and up and down. So if you want to try and keep your energy levels stable, which keeps your brain ticking over better, which keeps your body just ticking over better, actually protein is the first thing you should think about when you put a plate together. Where's my protein coming from? So that's, as I said, your chickpeas, your lentils, things like that if you're plant-based. And then if you eat meat or eat dairy, so dairy, eggs, really good. But then if you eat meat, then chicken, fish is an excellent source of protein.
Okay, let's turn to sports science and medicine. Well, so there's a number of us very keen on sport, and sport has really changed people's diets over the last 20 or 30 years. Now they have nutritionists at every big club, football club. I guess even the golfers at the Open yesterday have a nutritionist making sure what they eat. I see some footballers even have their own cooks at home. Tell us, is it pasta for energy or what?
So carbs are there for energy. Carbs are what give us energy. So you want to be eating carbohydrates ahead of exercise, but also you want to be eating protein, because protein actually is, as I said, it's your muscle builder. So a combination of carbs and protein is really good before exercise, but importantly after exercise you want to be trying to rebuild that muscle. So what we do and what exercise does is actually you kind of give micro injury to your muscles when you're exercising. So you want to be able to actually make it help it repair. So to do that, you want to give it what it's made of, which is protein. So after exercise, protein and some more, depending on how long you've exercised for, is how it's how much carbohydrate you add back in as well to kind of replenish those energy stores. If you've gone for a 5K run, then I would say protein, just have a boiled egg and some spinach, or have a piece of whole grain toast with some peanut butter. If you've been going out for a 3-hour run, or you've been running around for 90 minutes on a football pitch and been sprinting around for all that time, then you want to be putting a bit more carbohydrate back into your body as well as the protein.
Now the latest sports science is you jump in a cold bath as soon as an ice bath as soon as you've finished. I've never fancied that. Is that linked to those small muscle injuries? Yes,
apparently so. So I don't know too much about that in terms of the sport benefits, because there's been a bit of up and down. So there's you can find trials for, you can find trials against, and studies suggesting it's good and studies suggesting it doesn't make a lot of difference, and it's kind of all psychosomatic. What they do know is that so cold water therapy is really good for helping your body cope with stress, and exercise is stress. So it's good stress, but it's still stress. So if you indulge in cold water therapy, be that at the end of your shower in the morning, turning the temperature down to cold and standing under it for 30 to
doesn't sound a lot of
with ice, then you're actually giving your body a small amount of stress, which helps it cope with larger amounts of stress.
Oh, wow. Doesn't sound a lot of fun to me. I'll leave that to the younger people, I think, on the call. That's great. Okay, well, we're nearly coming to the end of the interview, Anna. Tell me a few simple fixes for those of us that go over Sainsbury's and buy the easiest foods to put in the microwave.
So I was trying to think, you asked me for one tip and I couldn't get to one.
Okay. How many could you get to?
I've got a few, which I think this is probably the easiest kind of rules to live by. So as I said, eating whole real food as much as possible, and cutting back on those packaged foods. The second thing, and this is important for sport, and we didn't touch on it, it's important for brain health and for concentration, but also for sport, is drink water. Hydrate with water and avoid caffeine. So that goes together. Caffeine is a stimulant. It doesn't provide you energy. It's a stimulant. So it's not real energy. So drink water. The third one, which I've already gone over, but just a reminder, is choose a really, really good quality proteins when you're eating. and base your plate around your vegetables and a really good quality protein. And then not really food, but as we get older, I touched on this before, we lose muscle mass, and muscle is our metabolism. So do some functional training or lift weights, something that actually improves your muscle tone and tries to build the muscle that you're actually losing. So lift weights. And then the last one is what I live by, is live by the 80-20 rule. So try and do 80% of the time, think about what your body needs versus what you want. And then 20% of the time, have whatever you like.
And you mentioned about gut. One of the things we talked about on the show before is gut feel, when we didn't trust someone, when we got a funny feeling about someone. That can't be to do with food, can it?
No, but what we feed ourselves helps our brain function. It helps our muscles, so it helps our nervous system, and so yes, it would help us think clearly. If we are drinking enough water, if we're eating the right foods, then that will help our brains to actually think clearly. So yeah, it could well be that.
And butterflies in our tummy when we're going out to play that important game, when we're really up for it. That's not food either, is it? That's just nerves and
that's nerves, but that shows you the connection between your brain and your gut. That really does show that your brain and your gut are talking all the time, because if you really kind of drill it down, if you're feeling nervous, why would your gut be involved? Surely it's your head that's feeling the nerves. But your gut feels it. You don't get suddenly your hands going all over the place. It's your gut that feels it. So there is this huge connection between the brain and the gut.
All via the vagus nerve, yes, which runs down the spine.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
The vagus nerve goes not just to the brain, but that's the most important link is from the brain to the gut and back.
Right, thank you. And the last question I wanted to ask you was, Andrew's asked, am I right in remembering that not all fruit is good for us in sugar terms? Because I've heard that as well.
Yeah, it depends on the situation. If you're on a long bike ride and you need a good hit of sugar, then a banana is a perfect choice for you. Things like grapes are quite high in sugar. But things like blueberries and raspberries are low in sugar. So it depends on that on the situation that you're eating them in.
Brilliant. Anna Gray, thanks for joining us. How do people get in touch with you if they want some advice?
So I have a website which is called thenourishingwell.co.uk. I'm also on LinkedIn under Anna Gray, but on a link to you, Derek, so they can find me via you. And also The Nourishing Well is on LinkedIn as well, and on Instagram and on Facebook.
Fantastic, Anna. I'll ask members of Monday Night Live to give you the usual round of applause in the normal way.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Anna, thanks for joining us. Anna, will you stay on and answer any other questions that people
will indeed, yes.
Thanks very much. I'll just stop the recording now.